Good evening and welcome to your senior year of high school webinar. My name is Nick Boudre from St. Clair County RESA, the supervisor of career and college programs, also representing Blue Water College Access Network. Tonight's webinar is the second of the Spring Essentials series, focusing on the class of 2022 and their transition to their senior year next fall. The spring is a very important time to start preparing for next school year, especially for juniors. There are many specific planning topics to get to know, such as college searches and career exploration, the FAFSA, scholarships, and even college applications. Then there's a very important conversation of what you're going to do this summer to put you at a competitive advantage for next fall. Yes, most people don't know that your planning for your senior year typically begins before you walk out the doors for this summer. Our goal this evening is to help provide you with a better understanding of these topics, how to determine what plan of action you need to be taking throughout those months, and what resources are out there to help guide you and support you along the way. To do so, we have an amazing panel here this evening I'm very excited about, with some of St. Clair County's most experienced and knowledgeable school counselors from our local school districts, as well as St. Clair County Tech Center, to bring their expertise of advising students throughout their careers to you this evening. The format this evening will be about a 30 to 40 minute discussion with the panel, followed by a question and answer segment where the audience can ask questions via the chat button at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the segment as well. Some suggestions this evening as you're listening to the panelists: ask yourself, what colleges or universities are you interested in attending? What is your career interest, or what would you like to do after your post-secondary education is completed? What are your plans for this summer? And overall, where do you see yourself in this process this evening? Without further ado, I'd like to get our first guest unmuted here. All right, if I can. All right, our first guest comes to us from Marysville High School, Holly Price. Holly, how are you doing this evening?
Doing great, thanks. How are you doing, Nick?
I'm doing very well. It's
good
to see you. Holly, we often hear the terms of career and college exploration. And what should juniors and their families be doing during this time, and what can they be considering to see throughout this process?
Great questions. And I think the process of career exploration and college exploration feels so large that sometimes it's hard to think about breaking it down. But I think a great place to start is the county sponsored Zello program, which is really designed for career and college exploration. And students start to use that program in the 8th grade. And there's a lot of tools there to look at your interests and to connect you with employment and areas of career interests. So I think that a really keen place to start is right there. And I know in Marysville schools, a student can take their school issued Chromebook and go right to the home page of Marysville schools and click on the Zello icon, and it will take that student right to their account. No need for a username or password. And the information is stored in there from 8th grade.
It's kind of like a one-stop shop. I know one of our guests later in this evening is going to talk a little bit about that too, but that's came a long ways from the days that I was in high school and trying to find all these resources and where they're at and where you can actually find them.
Absolutely. And it's all loaded right in there and saved for you, and you can update it as you mature. So I think that's a really, really good place to start. The other two things I like to recommend to students and families are resources that are really government resources, which is the Bureau of Labor Statistics, a U.S. government website that looks at employment outlook and where the jobs will be projected over the next 10 years, how much money those jobs make, what is the training required. What you really don't want to do, for instance, is spend $100,000 on training for a job or a career that really doesn't have any openings or any ability to get hired. So using those other two resources with the Zello, I think can really balance looking for a career.
I love that you brought that up because that's actually in one of the resources that we email out to all the
Oh,
students and families that are registered on here is that Michigan's hot 50 careers over the next 10 years. And the reason that's it's so important too is it shows, and I love that you brought that up, what I may want to go and do this as a career, but it gives not only the education that's required to obtain employment in that industry, but also how much you can make. And so those three things are very important when you're doing the exploration phase.
very much, very much. And I think it's not uncommon for students to end up with two or three things or areas that they're interested in. When we work in Zello, we talk about themes, just like you would in English. You know, what are the themes that kind of come up in your assessment? Is it working with your hands? Is it working outside? Is it working in an office? Is it helping people? So looking at those themes can really help you narrow down the area of study or interest.
Okay. Well, I know that every student has different interests, and every student is at a different point this evening along this process. But how does that exploration process look like for somebody that may be very passionate and know what they want to do, or somebody that, I talk with a lot of students and families that say, we just really don't know right now what our options are, what we really want to do in the future.
And I think you bring up a good point, Nick, is this is very family driven. And these are family decisions based on those conversations around the dinner table that probably have been taking place since somebody was 8 years old. What are the expectations when I'm done with high school? And where does my family see me going? What do they see me doing? How will they help me get there? So families are a huge part in this planning for sure, and choosing. Students that really maybe aren't as certain about what they want to do want to look at job shadow opportunities. They want to start talking to people that do the career they're interested in. They really want to keep exploring, exploring, exploring. Those that maybe have more of a decision made probably should look more towards how am I going to get there? The next step of where do I study to get to that particular degree or employment opportunity. So those students are looking at where am I going to apply? Where do I study? And that would be their major focus over the summertime and into early fall on where am I applying to?
And that was going to be my next topic too. It's actually two parts there. The college search process itself, as much as a career exploration, but college exploration. And, there's a lot of universities and colleges, from a community college to a trade school to a four-year university across the state and across the country. How do students and families, even as juniors, identify those schools, and then how do they get to the point where they end up picking one?
Mhm. Well, the web is a wonderful thing. In this day and age, you can really Google just about anything, all the colleges in Michigan, and see what's available. So students really start looking at, I think, what schools offer what they want to study. Or if they're between three or four things they want to study, what school offers all three of those things? In case once I get there, I still have those options to choose from. So looking at those on the web and narrowing those down in terms of the majors that you're looking for is very important. And you want to look at things like size. Am I an urban person and I just want to go to a school with 40,000 people? Or am I more of a small school sort of person? Am I more comfortable with 5,000 students in a rural setting? And what are some of the admission requirements? For instance, when you look at on the web at various schools, they will tell you what the average grade point average is, an SAT score for an incoming freshman. And you want to compare that to what yours are. And you want to look for a good fit. There's nothing wrong with applying to a school that maybe has some higher GPA expectations than you do, and that we would call a reach school. But you also want to make sure that where you go to school, you feel like you can be successful academically. You certainly don't want to get somewhere where you don't feel like you can be successful. And there is somewhere for everybody. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely finding that perfect fit. Holly, you made a really good point that about finding a school that actually offers the major
Mhm.
training or the degree that you need for the career that you want is very important. And I think it gets overlooked. Our webinar 2 weeks ago, where it was welcome to your freshman year of college for the graduating class of 2021 and the seniors, one of our panelists is a college freshman at Grand Valley State University. And he is from Port Huron High School, and he actually did that. He not only knew that it had one of his majors, it had another major he was interested in case he was going to switch. And he did switch, and he's switching in his second year, but he doesn't have to leave that university, which would probably cost him time and money.
Sure, for sure. I had a student not that long ago who was pretty set in the spring of their junior year about going to a particular university and hadn't realized that they didn't offer a nursing program. And that's what she wanted to study. So we had to back up and then reapply somewhere that had a nursing program and then some other things she was interested in as well. But she kind of felt at the end of the day that that would be a waste of time if she didn't go where at least there was a nursing program.
Yeah, that's such a great point, Howard. Thank you so much for bringing that up. And when we were getting ready for our segment together, you talked too about the curriculum of those programs and the importance of researching those. Talk to us a little bit about that.
I think one of the ways you can find out if you really are meant for that major or that area of study is to look, again, on the college websites. They will list for you what classes you have to take, for instance, to be a finance major or to be a business major or a biology major. And you can look at those and they'll list all the classes out and you can look at what do those classes entail. You know, if you're thinking you want to be a biology major, but yet it makes you queasy to be in an anatomy lab, that may not be your best choice. So maybe digging deeper into the curriculum, not just the major, but look at the curriculum on what it offers. If you're looking at things that you just think, oh, I don't think I can do that, that's probably not the best thing to pursue, but just taking it a little bit deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that in the exploration phase. You know, it's a lot of it is seeking and feeling out your interest and finding out the perfect fit and who you are and what you would like to become in the future. But that's taking it to another step. And speaking of steps, you and I also talked about, regardless of where you're at in this exploration phase as a junior, there are steps that you can be doing along the way and so that day you do make a decision, you're ready and you're prepared to do so. What are some of those steps throughout the exploration process that you can be completing this summer, maybe your senior year?
For sure this summer, perfect time to look for letters of recommendation. Whether to gather those, keep those on a flash drive, and you're going to be asking people that know you personally. Maybe it's a particular teacher, a counselor, a minister, a neighbor you've done work for, and ask for those letters of recommendation so you have those ready to go. You're going to be looking at finances. You know, do you have a job and are you saving? Or is there money there for you to go to school? Also preparing for your FAFSA in the fall, making sure that your family is ready October 1st when that opens to apply for FAFSA dollars.
I just wanted to, for the audience too, with some of the people, what does the acronym FAFSA stand for? Or I can too. I know it's the
federal free application for federal student aid.
Yes, and can you give us
free?
It's yes. Can you give us a brief definition of what that is?
What that is a government website where you enter in family financial information. And what comes back from that is any way that the federal government could help you fund post-secondary education. From the federal government, it goes to the individual schools that you've applied to. And those schools take a look at your application and see what monies or dollars are available at that particular school for you. At the end of all that, you get an award letter. Monies that come from the federal government, some monies that might come from the school itself, and then you can make some financial decisions based on that information.
Thank you so much. I know that's a big topic, and actually we had a whole webinar in the fall that was centered just around that topic, but I appreciate you bringing that up for the audience tonight. Before we kind of move through the panelists and get back to you during the question and answer segment, Holly, what was, one piece of advice that you would kind of leave juniors and their families with this evening that they can start, tomorrow when they return to school?
Don't panic. Do not panic. It's okay. There's plenty of time, but get organized. Go ahead and get organized and do one thing towards your goal. Even if that's researching what school or getting back on Zello. Just start doing some researching, making some plans, and just be prepared to change those. Or our famous word this year is pivot, right? Be prepared to pivot, and that's okay. Your plan is meant to be flexible.
I love that. Pivot, adjust, it's a plan and it's going to change, little changes, big changes, but as long as you're taking steps moving forward, Holly, that's some great advice. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We'll come back to you here after the rest of our panelists for the question and answer period, as we move to Dina French, who is going to be joining us from Port Huron Northern High School. Dina, how you doing this evening?
Fine, thank you.
Well, much like Holly talked a lot about the research and exploration process for juniors and their families to go through, you and I had a great conversation about experiences and opportunities, and as well as conversations. So what conversations should juniors and their families be having at this point in the spring of their junior year?
Sure, there's a lot of different things, and it's Holly did a great job and took a lot of really good information, and I really think you should really listen to what she said, because she made a lot of really good points. But part of what I was going to talk about is the career interests and how important that is, and planning, right? Like she talked about exploring if you know and if you don't know. So I think really there's just a lot along that same lines. If I were to say, like Holly was saying, maybe you know what way you're going to go and maybe you don't know. You don't have to have a passion. You just have to pick something. Just pick a place to start and then just go with that. And then as you go and explore these different things and learn more about it and look at the classes that are required for it, and if you don't enjoy that, then you try something different. But I think she made a really good point about really not panicking and not stressing about it. Just get out there and do some work. Just do some hard work and look things up and start doing some exploring. And I think it's amazing. Everything that you uncover that you like, or even those things that you uncover that you don't like, that's very beneficial, because you can then rule things out. And, I've had students go to the tech center and explore different careers there. And, they find out that they enjoy it, but it's not what they want to do for their future. And that's actually good. I think that's a success, right? Because now you know exactly what you don't have to worry about, and you can pick a different path. So I think that just some really good conversations about getting out there and doing things like that will be really helpful.
Yeah, I love that so much. I love, because there's that phrase that always, finding out what you want to do, but it's also as important to find out what you don't want to do. And by doing that is getting out there and putting yourself out there and getting those experiences and opportunities. But it starts with conversations. You and I had a great conversation about the importance of experiences and opportunities and how that plays into that world. Can you talk a little bit about how important it is for students to find those opportunities and seek them out in terms of this process?
Yeah, I really do think, I have 5 children, and so I've been through the process, and I've learned with every one of them, I've learned something new. And I still have a high schooler, but only one. So we've been through it multiple times, and each one of my children have tried different things and explored with different things. Whether it's the summer job, get out there and work with people. Even if it's McDonald's, you're getting you might work at the cash register and you get good people skills. Find out if you like working with people, learn how to communicate. All those things are going to be really, really helpful. I think it's just going to just define and shape you. Like one of my sons was like, well, I want to know right now. Well, you're not going to know right now. Like, take the opportunity that comes to you, or take and make an opportunity, and then just go with that and enjoy it for the time. And then what will the next step be? It might be something totally different, but I think what you find along the way is you find different things that really help you. And so I think experiences, some of the things that I would encourage if you have the opportunity is, do things like job shadowing. Job shadowing can be really important. I know it might be a little tricky right now, but I still think you can. Whether it's just having a conversation on the phone or over Zoom, but it's good. Talk to people, ask them, what do you like about your job? What don't you like? Where did you go to school? What did that look like? What was your journey? And every time I meet with somebody, especially like my kids that are older, I meet with their friends. I'm like, what are you studying? What did you, what are you doing? How'd you get there? And my kids get a little annoyed sometimes, but I'm always learning some really cool things that I then can share with my own students, which I think are really critical. So job shadowing is really important. You all have relatives or neighbors or friends, or your parents have people they work with who know people. And I'll just throw this out there. Orthopedic associates, they love to have kids come and job shadow. My son went and job shadowed 2 different doctors there, and they were both fabulous experiences. So I highly recommend you reach out to people. I think it's really important. The other thing, experiences that can be helpful are part-time jobs, like I was talking about earlier, but it doesn't even have to be, it doesn't have to be McDonald's. It could be just working for your neighbor, helping them paint, do landscaping, right? Doing yard work. You're going to learn a lot of different skills and things that can be very beneficial. I know some other things that some of my kids have done, volunteer work. And there's so many different things you can do in volunteer, right? From the former candy striping volunteer program at the hospital to volunteering at your church and vacation Bible school. I mean, if you like working with kids and you might want to be a teacher, well, you can volunteer at Vacation Bible School, have your own little class of kids and practice it and see if you like it. I mean, what a better opportunity to get there and work hands-on with these kids and be the person that's responsible for leading. And it might just be a short little time, but it's an exposure and an experience that can be really helpful. Last year, the RESA program, BW Can, had some guest speakers in. And so my daughter went out and she went and shadowed the EMT, one of the ladies there, and she really liked it a lot. But after doing that, she decided that it wasn't something that she wanted to do, permanently. But she got a chance to go out and see it. I know that, school is a little bit interesting right now, but, my kids go to Yale High School. I'm a counselor at Northern, but over at Yale High School, my daughter's high school was done an hour and a half before the elementary kids. So when she finished, for a semester there, she would go over to the elementary and volunteer in the kindergarten classroom with her former kindergarten teacher and gave some help to the teacher, plus got a chance to see what it was like. So that was helpful. I just think there's just so many different things you can do. And I think you should try different experiences. I think you should. I think it's important. So I kind of went on, and I might have jumped ahead to some of the other things, but.
No, you answered that very well. And I think you made a really interesting point too. And Holly talked about this, being able to pivot to is just not, getting yourself on just a one-way track, and stretching yourself in your experiences. And you made a really good point, as Holly did, is taking it a step further and digging deep into the process a little bit deeper. In the job shadows, the point that you made too, that I often talk with students and their families when getting that question of like, we want a job shadow, but sometimes that job shadow right in that career or that position isn't available. You can't, but you're finding experiences that maybe are aligned to them, much like a teacher, working with kids, not standing in front of a classroom, maybe it's in a medical field, but you're doing something in the hospital in that industry. So sometimes those job shadows don't have to be specific right alongside, but it's in the industry itself.
Yeah, because even then you get to see what those other people are doing, even if you can't do exactly what you think you want. You get to actually, see what they're doing to kind of experience the environment, which I think the environment's very helpful.
Yes, absolutely. Being in the environment is part of that exploration phase that Holly and yourself both talked about. We're going to switch gears just a little bit here because it was along those lines. We're talking about your children and a lot of their experiences and opportunities that they had, but also how students, and especially juniors getting ready for their senior year, can start getting creative and strategic and intentional with some scheduling, or maybe some AP classes, or maybe even some dual enrollment or taking college courses during the summer. What kind of an advantage would that put juniors, going to be soon seniors, at as they're approaching graduation next spring?
Sure. So, and it kind of goes along with what Holly was saying about looking at the programming. If you know what you want to study and you go onto that college website, you can look at the programming and what classes they offer, and then maybe coordinate some of that with the dual enrollment. But I do think it's very helpful. And I like this conversation a lot because it's a conversation I have with students all the time, at school, because just using a few examples of my own children, like, I've had 2 of my children are graduating a semester early because they have extra dual enrollment plus AP credit. But I have one of my son's friends, she did 2 years of college and only went to her private college for 2 years because she came in with all these AP credits. And she, of course, in order to do 2 years of college, you actually have to be you have to know what you're going to do, and you have to be very specific. But I just think there's a lot of really good opportunities for kids out there. And, the question is should you do AP? Should you do dual enrollment? And honestly, the answer to that question is really going to be talk to the college that you want to go to. Because, if you're going to go to a more selective university, they very well might prefer you to do AP rigorous classes to be more competitive. And they may not even really, like, for example, U of M, in most cases, they want you to have a 5 on an AP test. Well, that's tough to get, right? But also, if you take dual enrollment classes, they may not transfer them very specifically. So you really need to have a conversation with, or reach out to your individual, like if you're planning to do U of M, you should reach out to our connection here that we have for the St. Clair County, and just reach out and ask questions, because they'll be able to give you very specific answers for that. But, like picking classes for dual enrollment purposes, to transfer to other universities to cut time off or get some of your basics done, I think it's a great idea. It gives you a little bit of exposure, gives you some opportunity to figure out what college might look like, right? You're kind of balancing a high school and college schedule. So you're kind of getting that experience to do that, which, is really helpful. And then you got some under your belt, so that if you go away, like my daughter, she's in her first year and she's changed her major like 3 times already. And, she probably could have graduated a semester early, but at least now she'll be able to graduate on time, because she has those extra dual enrollment credits and AP credits. So that's another thing that it can give you. It can give you that extra cushion as you're exploring different things. And, with the way things have been, a lot of people are looking for unique ways to do their scheduling. Like, I don't know about you, Holly, or you, Kim, but, I've got kids saying, I only need math and English next year. Can I just take those 2 and not take anything else? Well, no, you can't. You have to have a full schedule. And 2, what do you want to do? Like, do you want to go on to school? Because if you do want to go someplace, you really need to have your schedule be fairly rigorous that lines up with the place that you want to go to, right? So if you want to go to U of M or Kalamazoo College, something, or maybe even Michigan State, those are more selective, and you're going to want to have a fairly rigorous schedule. Going to SC4 or even just a state college, it may not be as important that you have a full, hard, difficult schedule. So you just have to really make sure. And if you don't know where you want to go, because I have a child right now who doesn't know what he wants to study and doesn't know where he wants to go. And so I'm like, okay, well, we're just going to pick a few, we'll do SC4 as an application. We're going to apply to a couple others, so that you just don't want to wait till the last minute. And I think, Holly was mentioning that, picking 2 or 3 different places, so that in case you change your mind, because you probably will. And it's okay that you do.
That's such a great point. And to go back a little bit, what you said with the AP and the scheduling and dual enrollment, I love the connection to our last webinar as well that I mentioned with Holly. Is we had a student, she's her first year at SE4, but applying to the nursing program. However, when she was a junior, and I took a little bit later on when I'm talking with Deb Roshak in St. Clair Tech, was she saw that she had to have certain requirements to put herself at a competitive advantage. So she actually went to SE4 and took a class her junior summer and her senior summer. Mm-hmm. One class, just not dually enrolled, just to get ready to apply when she was a freshman in college. And then we actually had a panelist on another webinar, took AP classes and entered Michigan State at the sophomore and almost, as a junior status right away because of the AP credit. So it's finding that balance for what you're exploring and what colleges you'd like to attend.
Yeah, and I think taking, dual enrollment classes, even if you aren't using them for transferable credits, if you just want to explore a different area, if your school doesn't have those classes, that can also be very beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. And what, if you had to really center, we talked a lot about experiences and opportunities and being strategic with your scheduling, which is so great. What's your best piece of advice that you could leave juniors and families with this evening in terms of where they're at right now at the end of their junior year?
Sure. So, Holly kind of said a lot of what it was, but I would just say to kind of go along with that, like my key was going to be really don't stress out about it all. I don't want parents to stress. I don't want students to stress, because one of the most common questions you're going to get in the next year is, where are you going to school and what are you going to study? And you're going to hear it over and over and over and over again. And, and I talk to student after student after student, and it's stressful for them. They're like, I got to have an answer because everybody's going to ask me. And I just want to say, find an answer that you feel comfortable giving. But if you really don't know what it is, it's really okay. Like, I think when you go away to school, like my daughter didn't know what she wanted to do. She kind of does now, but she's been asking different people there and exploring and meeting with her advisor, and it's been very helpful to her. So I would just say, don't stress about it. Just pick something for now, just so you have a plan and a path. And along the way, if you change your mind, change your mind. It's really okay. And I would encourage parents as well, just to help their students, because there's just so much pressure for these young people. I wish you guys would just enjoy your senior year. Just enjoy the process of exploration and trying new things. And because there'll be a future to work forever and ever and ever. So enjoy the educational process and just relax and try not to stress too much about it.
Well, thank you so much, Dina. Yeah, I think that's a few great pieces of advice there. Not only that it's a process and the process takes time, but it's a process that involves multiple people, including your families, your parents, the counselors that are with us this evening, your teachers, your administrators from the school. So it's a long process, but the more people you involve, you participate in the process, and the planning, it does alleviate a lot of that stress your senior year. So thank you so much. Next up, we are going to move to our third panelist, Kim DeLand. It's coming to us from Yale High School. Kim, how are you doing this evening?
I'm fabulous. How are you, Nick?
I am great. Thank you so much for joining us. I know Holly and Dina talked a lot about a lot of topics that you and I can talk about, but we also have some other things that kind of dig deeper in some of these specific college topics as well. When students, we'll start off with, when students are in that college search mode, and there's that one item I talked about earlier is college applications. How are those two things related?
Yeah, when you're in the college search mode and you're thinking about applying, I know that both Holly and Dina mentioned going to the school's website to learn about all the things you're going to need to apply, right? And the deadlines that might be applicable, right? Because sometimes there are early scholarship deadlines for competitive scholarships, like Centralis, for example, at Central Michigan University. You can apply for admission for a long time at Central. You can do that even into the winter. But those competitive scholarships typically have deadlines in the early fall. So if you're trying to best prepare yourself to get not only an application admission status, but also maybe some scholarship dollars, applying early is important. So that college search mode, when you're on the school's website, is looking for things like their deadlines, looking for things that their minimum requirements, what is the GPA requirement? What is the SAT requirement? If that's still applicable, because some schools have gone test optional with the emergence of COVID. And then any other, the essay that you might have to write, you want to start proofreading and drafting, those sorts of things. So all of those informational pieces can be found on a college's website.
Well, you hit on a few great topics, and I'm going to stick with this topic of applications, because that is one point that is often discussed in these conversations that is really important, that, you know, when the school year starts and the buzz of a new school year, and we're excited to be back, and you know, and everything's rolling, but there are deadlines that are right around that time period that yeah. And how can students this summer be getting ready for that? You know, is there certain ways, like, is there, you know, things that they can do to get themselves ready for those deadlines?
Yeah, so getting organized, I think, is super important. You can look on a college's website right now to see what their fall deadlines are. You might not be able to actively apply quite yet to some of the universities, but you can absolutely see what their deadlines are, you know? So getting yourself organized over the summer and even the spring would be a great first step. And then, like you had mentioned, the buzz of September is real, right? School starts, you got to apply to college, you got the FAFSA right around the corner. Oh, and by the way, you're just like starting your senior year and trying to like enjoy your last year of high school. So there's lots of things that happen all at the same time. So I think if you go into that September timeframe with some organization behind you, you're going to have a much easier time than if you're trying to do everything on the fly. Definitely try to be organized.
I love that. And it's really, you know, setting a schedule almost for yourself on these deadlines and taking a look at that calendar and that planner and saying, okay, here this week, you know, U of M opens up, Fair State opens up, you know, C4 would need this from me. But the research process that all three of you talked about, that is part of that, finding that information and that's out there on the websites. There's another good topic you brought up, and it's we're not going to dig too much into it for time's sake, but the SAT and test optional. Optional is something that is going to be a part of these students' application process. Talk to us a little bit more about what that test optional means in terms of looking at certain schools and different universities.
Sure. So usually, like pre-COVID, when you apply to college, there's going to be an application that you submit. You're going to submit your high school transcript, which is going to be reviewed by the admissions committee at the university. And they're looking at things like the classes you've taken, the GPA that you have, your planned courses for your senior year. And all of that kind of contributes to your admissions decision. Additionally, the SAT has been a part of that process. Because of COVID, you know, not everybody was able to take the SAT. And so some schools have gone test optional, meaning that they can admit you or provide an admissions decision of some sort without an SAT score. Now, with that being said, every university has, you know, the capacity to make their own decision as far as that goes. So it would be wise to research in that college search mode this summer of, do I need an SAT score to go to this particular school? And if I don't have an SAT score, I should be taking it, right? So there's going to be, I'm sure, summer offerings of the SAT to either retake it if you took it earlier this year, maybe in the fall at your school, and you want a better score because that's what's required for your admission, or you've not taken it and the school that you really, really want to go to is still requiring it. Now, admissions is one thing, scholarships could be another thing, right? So sometimes these scholarship requirements, like a Centralis, for example, traditionally has required an SAT score component. And so scholarships might also be a test optional or a test required situation. So it's kind of an added piece to the figuring out the steps to applying and what I need to get my ducks in a row. Do I need an SAT score? And that's kind of an added thing now.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's I know that's a topic that's going to come up, and especially over the next year or two. So thank you so much for that. Yeah, I loved how you answered this question when I asked you when we were prepping for our segment. What colleges should students apply to?
Anyone that interests you. I don't know why we like take ourselves out of the race, you know? I'm a big advocate for letting other people tell you no. Like, don't say no to yourself. If your dream is to go to MSU, you know, apply. You should, I feel like you should apply, even if there's a difference between having realistic expectations and dreams, right? You're 17 years old, your dreams are still alive. Apply to the schools, let the admissions team make their decisions. And if you know that you're a kiddo that's on the bubble, so to speak, let's say that the dream school you want to go to requires a 2.5 cumulative GPA to get in, and you have a 2.4, and you've been working really hard and you really want to go to whatever this school is, apply early then, right? Don't wait for them to admit 30,000 students before you. Apply early. That's going to be your best bet of at least getting maybe on a wait list or getting admitted, kind of under the radar there. So applying early is a good thing, especially if you're a bubble kiddo, which just means that you're a student who's kind of on the cusp of meeting admissions.
And I love that. Thank you so much.
But yeah, I got yourself out of the race. Yeah.
And you talked a little bit what Holly and Dina talked about this a little bit too. The narrowing down, and there's specific terms. There's the safety school, there's that match school, and then there's that reach school. Talk to a little bit about what those three different schools are.
Yeah, so, and that's kind of what I was just talking about. So a reach school would be where you're not quite meeting the admissions minimums, right? So if it's requiring a 2.5 GPA and I don't quite have a 2.5, I'm reaching for that admission decision, right? So that would be a reach school. A match school would be something where I fit the criteria. I have the 2.5. I meet exactly what they're looking for in their minimum requirements. And a safety school would be I'm way above, right? This would be a 4.0 student applying to a 2.5 minimum school. And again, I think it just matters on what the fit is that you're looking for. Is it the school that offers the major that you're looking for? All the stuff that Dina and Holly have previously talked about.
Okay, yeah. And I think that's so important too, giving yourself all that research and planning, but getting it narrowed down from the ones that you're all applying to, getting it down to those three, and knowing that, those are the ones like Holly talked about that have the majors that I want to either to study in or possibly change into throughout the course of being in college. Another great conversation that we've had before is the difference between the student and the plan that needs to take place for a student that knows exactly what they want to do and a student that's still figuring this out. And Holly and Dina talked about this, but you also said it very well, is it's two different forms of planning.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and like you said, Holly and Dina kind of mentioned some of this stuff, but when you're in the I'm not so sure what I want to do boat, that's not a bad boat to be in. It just means that you're exploring more options, right? So getting meaningful summer experiences, those part-time jobs, all of the stuff that Dina and Holly had mentioned, spending your summer doing. So you're setting yourself up to have more options down the road because you're not quite sure what you want, right? So the more options, the more chances you're going to have to find something that fits. For students who are pretty dead set on their path, they know exactly what they want to do, where they want to go, what they want to study. Those kiddos can start preparing earlier, right? Because they know, and they can start meeting their deadlines as soon as possible. It's just can be a little bit more, it's only one thing that you're focused on. So you only have one thing to focus on instead of a student who's exploring still and kind of trying to figure out what they're focusing on. But no path is like better or worse than any other. And like both Holly and Dina have mentioned, the flexibility piece, the being okay with changing your mind piece, is super important and definitely relevant.
Thank you so much, and very well said. So I'll leave with one more. You were a college advisor at one point and now a counselor and actually an athletic director before. What's the best advice for all those experiences that you've seen working with families, especially juniors, that you could give the audience this evening?
Yeah, I'm definitely on the train that Dina was talking about. Have fun, enjoy your youth. This is your senior year. With that being said, part of the fun that you should be having is preparing for your future, right? Like that should give you kind of a rush of exhilaration, like, oh, this is kind of exciting. The doors are open to you. So enjoy yourself, but get yourself organized, apply to things early, talk to your counselors or college advisors if you have one in your building to help you formulate that plan so you're ready to hit the ground running come September.
Well, thank you so much, Kim. We'll come back to you here shortly after our next guest for the question and answer period. Next up, we have Deb Roshak that's joining us from St. Clair County Tech. Deb is the assistant director over at St. Clair County Tech, but also was a counselor, at Memphis High School before joining us here at RESA. So Deb, how are you doing this evening?
I'm great, Nick. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for joining us. So we're going to shift gears a little bit, but we're going to talk about kind of the same things, but a little bit from the tech perspective as well. because there's a lot of juniors that are out at Tech and in those programs. So as a Tech student, they're coming to the end of their first year in a lot of their programs. What can they be doing over the summer as they prepare for not only their senior years in high school, but also for their second year in those programs?
Sure. And I think a lot of this would apply to any old junior too, not just Tech juniors. Really, I think of the summer between junior and senior year on the continuum of student development as a shift from the career exploration piece to more of a career development piece, where students are identifying their skills and maybe their gaps in skills. So going off of what Dina and Holly and Kim have all mentioned about summer jobs and volunteer work and job shadows, it's just a great time for all students, especially those in Tech programs, to highlight their skills, emphasize them, ask others what they're seeing as skills, to help with developing their resume, asking for letters of recommendation. And it's kind of like your last chance to support any of those gaps you might have. So when you're looking at colleges or careers of interests and say using Zello, you come to find that you might have to speak to large groups of people and you don't have experience there yet. This is your summer to find that experience. It's working at your vacation Bible school, like Dina said, or leading a group project. So those are things that I would focus on as you shift from career exploration to career development, looking at your senior year.
Well, I love, that's very well put, Deb. It's shifting from throughout this process and the shift from exploration to being more intentional and strategic. And I love that you said identifying gaps. And we talked about the research in terms of admissions and scholarships and their relation to developing a resume and portfolio, which is part of not only at St. Clair Tech, but also at the local high schools. What do you mean by identifying gaps? And what can juniors and families be doing once they identify those gaps?
So again, kind of piggybacking off what's already been said with letters of recommendation, for example, making sure you have a well-rounded group of people that you can turn to when you need a letter of rec. So looking ahead to your senior year, talking specifically to students right now, you may be asked to complete a scholarship application, a college application, a job application, and depending on what area the career's in or what the college focuses on, you might want to look at your circle of friends, circle of trust, and find the best person to write your letter of rec. For example, if you're applying for a scholarship that's more of a faith-based scholarship or a volunteer community giving back to the community, then maybe you want to look at a relationship you've built with someone out of your church. On the flip side, if you're applying for an athletic scholarship, you want to make sure you've kept in contact with one of your favorite coaches or somebody who holds you in high regard because you were a great team leader. So just kind of tapping into those different resources you've built along the way. So as Kim mentioned, getting those things organized right now will be really helpful when an opportunity presents itself. You'll just be able to grab out of your bag of tricks and you'll have those things ready. Trying to think back to your question, Nick, you were saying gaps and filling those this summer. Does that cover it?
And resumes too. And as much as these programs, there's a lot of great programs at Tech, but you're looking at developing a resume, and for a scholarship, they call it the brag sheet. But you're looking at that resume and you're finding areas that you might be able to strengthen this summer, correct?
Yeah, so you want your resume to be very reflective of your strengths. So if you're pursuing a degree or a career in a field that requires a large amount of teamwork, you want to make sure your resume reflects that. And that's going to speak true beyond your senior year and into your future. When you're applying for jobs and you're building your resume, highlighting those strengths and recognizing where the ask is. So like I said, with teamwork, you're going to want to show that you're able to work with others. So being a team manager at a McDonald's this summer participating in athletic events, maintaining your participation in extracurriculars through your senior year, not giving up. Colleges, employers all like to see consistent stick-to-itiveness, grit, that when you're passionate about something, you stick with it, that you have loyalty. So finding those skills and strengths that you have as an individual and highlighting them on a resume would be very important.
That's a great point. And I like that you've taken it a little bit farther because that actually gets into the college application process and scholarship process where you write essays. And you and I have had great conversations about this. You know, telling your story is huge about scholarships. You know, talk to us a little bit why that's important in telling your story and what an essay will do for college admissions and scholarships.
Sure. So I'm here to tell you, we really do read your essays. I know sometimes it feels like you're just writing the same thing over and over. And I encourage you to step out of the box and be creative and show how unique you are. So I'm not asking you to lie or make up a story or elaborate, but be yourself and be proud of who you are. So those things show through in an essay because they put the reader in your shoes and they see things from a different perspective sometimes. So it's easy to be compelling when you're passionate about being yourself and your future. So as you're completing essays for scholarships, job applications, college applications, I don't know if you ever have to write an essay for a job application, but maybe. Be sure to be yourself because it's going to be reflective if you do have a face-to-face interview. Once you get the job, you know, if you do make up an elaborate story in an essay and let's say it's about your dog and then come to find out you're allergic to dogs, I mean, that's going to show through pretty quick. You're working at a vet office.
Well, I'm glad that we touched on that topic because it is important and actually it aligned with what Kim said. This test optional that's a part of college admissions right now because of the changes over the last year due to COVID with the SAT test. There's a lot of articles in a lot of publications right now that the essay is replacing a lot of that in terms of college admissions and telling your story. So they're looking at more of the whole student versus, some of that statistics and data that they got from the SAT test.
Yes, that's encouraging. It's your opportunity to share your story more than just numbers and data, to stand out among the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, shift a little bit, but it's a broad topic or question. What, and we keep saying it's not just the students, it's a lot of people, including their parents and families or trusted adults. What can they be doing over the summer in terms of planning for next fall and beyond graduation?
So my answer to this question is also the same to the final question you've asked all the other panelists about the one piece of advice. And that's to set aside time to make this possible, to be intentional. To parents, my words of advice are, don't give up, don't stop nagging. We students really need you to take a stance and to set aside time to show your son or daughter the importance of this career in college planning and development phase. Summer's a great time. If, for example, if you can set aside an hour every Sunday for the next 8 weeks, that's 8 hours of not only family time, but it's just encouraging their future and your investment in them. I think parents are seeing a lot of dollar signs right now as we're planning for college applications. What a wonderful investment to give your family the time that they need to plan for these things and to work together. And on the flip side, to students, my encouragement is to involve your parents or a trusted adult. This is not the time to turn away advice. I know that most juniors going into seniors do know everything that there is to know, but just in the off chance that there's something you're missing, I encourage you to please go with those trusted people. even if it's outside of the family, if you need outside perspective, trusted adults, please don't turn us away at this time. We all really need each other.
Well, Deb, thank you so much. I love that you did answer my final question for you on the best advice, but I appreciate you adding to a lot of those topics and talking much about the topics that we did cover earlier. The one thing too is you're heavily involved with Zello. Is there anything that you wanted to add in on Zello and what that provides students and their families with?
I could go on and on. Do we have another hour? If nothing else, please visit your high school website, log into Zello. It's a single sign-on, so it's going to use your Google account. If you have trouble, please ask your counselor. Nick, do you share our contact information too?
Yes, yep. I'll share email. Will follow up this webinar tomorrow with all the resources and information that's talked about this evening.
So I'll help anyone with Zello. Once you log on, it's very self-explanatory, student-driven. This is a wonderful way to start that family planning time that I mentioned. If you can spend an hour together on Zello to see what your student over the last 4 years has identified as their interests and their skills, they have the ability to save careers, schools that they're interested in. You can hear from real people with real jobs. There's videos about a day in the life of an accountant, a day in the life of a nurse. It's a great place to get started. It's a conversation starter for those of us who struggle to even know where to begin. Zello is your jam. It's my jam too.
So much, Deb. Yes, it's a lot of things, even virtually touring a college across the country is even on there. So
yes,
source for our students and their families. So thank you so much, Deb. We're getting down towards the end of this evening, and actually we are now going to get to the question and answer segment of the evening. So students, parents, if you go down to the bottom of your screen and hover the mouse, it says chat. You can enter a question in there, and if you want it directed towards one of our panelists, we can actually read that out off there and direct it at that specific person. I actually have a couple question at least to get us rolling here. And I'm gonna ask Holly, because you mentioned it earlier, in terms of the FAFSA and the date that is centered around that application and when that opens up, and the importance of that. So what is that date again?
October 1st is when it
October
opens.
1st. Okay, and does that run for a few days, a few weeks?
The preferred time frame would be October 1st through March 1st.
March 1st. Okay. And is that something that just students need to do, or parents, or both?
Both. So you'll need your parents' information in order to complete the FAFSA, tax information.
Okay. And actually, one of the things that students and families can actually, the initial process is the FSAID for both of them. They both have to create them, but they can actually do that before it opens up, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
And they'll both need one.
And they both need one. Okay,
Right.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And now I'm gonna go over to Kim. And Kim, you talked a little bit about this when we were prepping in terms of, I think it was scholarships and folders. Where would a student that's at Yale High School find scholarships that are available?
Yeah, so one of the good things that came out of COVID is that it gave me an opportunity to transition all of the paper copies to Google Forms. So they're easier to track and maintain and stuff. So at Yale, 90% of the scholarship applications for our local area are Google Forms that I send out to the kiddos via email. Usually our local scholarships open up like in January and stuff.
Okay, very good. Yes, I know the Community Foundation and SE4 and certain scholarships at certain universities, they become available at certain times, regardless if it's a community organization. So keeping those deadlines and a folder and everything organized is really important. So thank you very much. I just got a question in through the chat that I'm going to actually throw out, and if anybody wants to take it, it's is there a way to search colleges by degree and activities and interests or special groups? So is there a way that they can search colleges by the degrees they offer and in terms of a student's interests or activities that they participate in?
there is.
Go
There
ahead,
definitely
Kim.
is, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm glad somebody asked that question because I didn't get to bring it up earlier. And there might be more than one spot to do this, but the spot that I like is through the College Board. It's the Big Future website. So the website is literally bigfuture.collegeboard.org. And that has all of the colleges in our nation that you can search by major. So let's say that you want to study zoology, but you have no idea what colleges offer that major. You can search nationally or by region or state or whatever type of filter you want to put on it. And it's an extremely user-friendly website. And it's through the College Board, which is what houses the SAT. So it all kind of ties everything in together for you. So that website you can use to filter by all sorts of things: clubs, activities, region, major, population size. It's wild. It's great.
Thank you so much. Does anybody want to add in, Deb?
Yes, similarly, Zello will provide a very user-friendly experience in searching colleges by major interest, tells everything about population, financing, endowment fund size.
Very good. Perfect. Well, I actually have one come through here, and I'm going to ask Dina about this one. And it's approaching with the seniors right now, and your sons and daughter went through this as well. The decision days. What is a decision day? When is it their senior year, and what does that entail?
So decision day, you know, in the senior year has typically been like the 1st of May. It's the time when you have to let the college or university, let's say you apply to 3 colleges and universities, you get accepted to all 3. Typically, they're going to say you need to put down a deposit by May 1st to the one that you want to go to. And so that's what decision day has become. And then each of the schools recently with our college advisors have really highlighted the people, the students' decisions. So we have now made, celebration of decisions that the students have. And so they may pick a different day in May that they go ahead and, each school highlights that. But I will tell you, I had an experience with a student of mine who by May 1st, she didn't know if she wanted to go to U of M or Michigan State. She could not decide. And, decision day is May 1st. So she just put her deposit down in both places. And because she wasn't sure. So she wanted to make sure she didn't lose her spot. And you know what? It was like $100. She lost $100 to one college and she waited until July to decide. And that was the best time for her to make that decision. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think decision day shouldn't stress you out. It's just a decision so that the colleges know how to plan for their fall classes and in housing, and you're making a commitment to them. So that's how I would say about decision day.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Yes, that's another important day and topic for juniors to be considering and planning for their senior year. Well, this concludes this event this evening. Next week, we will actually be publishing the Blue Water College Access Network Spring and Summer Checklist to help guide you throughout the next month based on the many topics that were discussed this evening by our panelists. Our next and final event for the year will take place on May 18th at 7 p.m. featuring our very first webinar for our current 8th grade students in the graduating class of 2025 to welcome their career and college planning to high school next fall as they begin their freshman year of high school. For more information, students and families can always visit the Blue Water College Access Network website at bwcan.org, where they can find not only the recording of this webinar, but also the recording of our other webinars from the Winter and Fall Essentials series and much, much more. You can also subscribe to, here's the recordings right here. That's actually the recording for the parent-to-parent recording that was back in February. You can also subscribe to the Blue Water College Access Network monthly newsletter that provides students and families with updated information and resources from St. Clair County RESA, Blue Water College Access Network, and the community and state partners as well. Last but not least, we have our wonderful counselors that are here today talking to us about advising students and their families, but also we are fortunate to have college advisors in St. Clair County. These are our 5 college advisors for this school year. They are placed at these local high schools and also help support students and families along with our counselors in the districts as well. And they can help with a smooth transition into next year. Without further ado, we're going to get to the scholarship drawing segment of our evening, where one lucky 11th or 12th grade student from St. Clair County will be awarded a $500 scholarship that is made possible by our amazing partners at the Community Foundation of St. Clair County. So grab, shake up the tickets here, and we'll email the information and the paperwork to the student and the families tomorrow. If you're underclassmen, we'll track it and prepare for your post-graduation plan. So the winner tonight is Yale High School junior Caleb French. Congratulations, Caleb. Thank you for being here this evening, and we will be sending information to you tomorrow with the information on the scholarship. So a special thank you to our panelists this evening. We know that this is a very important time of the school year and a very busy time for all of you. And to take time out of your busy schedules for us this evening, we're greatly appreciate that. So thank you very much. And to the audience, thank you for joining us. I'm Nick Bouger from St. Clair County RESA. You have a great evening. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.